Whether you like it or not, the ocean covers over 71% of all surface area on Earth. Although this massive, horrific ecosystem is so close to us, we've only yet to discover 28% of the entire ocean. So that leaves room for myths and legends and deep, dark mermaids and monsters. But that only scratched the surface. I've always felt a strong connection with the ocean, being out on the water, looking around, seeing nothing but ocean and the moon hitting the water, and having this eerie feeling that you might not know if something's underneath you or not. Hello, my name is Bodhi, and today we are going to be talking about sea monsters and ocean myths and legends. Before we dive deep into this mythology, please hit that subscribe button and like the video for me.
The Kraken!
The Kraken is a legendary Scandinavian sea monster said to resemble an enormous tentacled cephalopod. For centuries, sailors feared this beast could drag entire ships into the deep sea. The myth was largely inspired by real sightings of the elusive giant squid and colossal squid. We haven't really recorded any live documentations of those animals, besides a few. The legend of the Kraken dates back to the 12th century Norwegian sagas. So this massive squid bigger than boats and islands can make itself look like an island to lure pirates in or lure sailors in. That is pretty fascinating. We don't really have any documents or anything really related to the Kraken about if it's real or not, but we do have this story from this old story set back in 1873, and I'll just read it out for you guys. 26th of October, 1873. Daniel Squires and Theophilus Pickett, along his 12-year-old son, went to a bay near St. John's at Newfoundland's southeast corner in a dory to put out a net at the Conception Bay. That is when they saw what they thought was a patch of seaweed. Upon inspection, the surface was shiny and velvet blue. One of the men used a boat hook to poke the suspected carcass, which suddenly shot 8 suction covered arms into the air. The arms whipped in the air, and in the middle of the beast they could see a parrot-like beak and 2 dish-sized eyes. A couple of snake-like longer arms shot through the foamy water and began pulling dory towards the beast. A couple of snake-like longer arms shot the foamy water and began pulling the dory towards the beast. The grown man bashed the arms with the oars while trying to get the water out of the boat. It was at this time the 12-year-old Tom grabbed an axe, chopped the 2 thinner arms that were grabbing the dory. The beast withdrew immediately, and then the men rowed to land as quickly as they could, with the 2 chopped off arms still wrapped around the boat. Finally, in safety, they presented the arms as evidence for their encounter, even if the longest chopped off bit was a small piece relative to the length of the arm before dismemberment. This does sound like a crazy myth. I don't really believe this story. I think this is just a fairy tale, but it's cool to think that there's a giant octopus, squid-like cephalopod underneath the water, disguising itself as like seaweed patches or islands, and right when you don't know that it's actually that, it comes out with its tentacles and kills you. I think it's really fascinating. I think it's a cool little story, but it's definitely just a myth and legend. So moving on to the next on my list, we have H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu. I never really read the book, but I really love the idea of a being that knows that you're thinking about it, and if you think about it, you're essentially cursed with his magic powers. So Cthulhu is from a writer, H.P. Lovecraft, and published in 1928. It's a pretty old book, around almost 100 years old to this day. So it definitely stirred up some popular It inspired a lot of artists and a lot of writers to base their things off of. It is really, so like you hear the term people say Lovecraftian. It's kind of just like this like unthinkable, unimaginable entity, or like this world that you can't really comprehend in a science fictional way. And Cthulhu is just an ocean creature, basically. It's got like this tentacle face and is huge. In the book, The Call of Cthulhu, it follows Francis Wayland Thurston, and he investigates a collecting of notes left by his deceased grand uncle, George Gamel Angel. The documents connect a young artist's strange dreams, a police raid on a secret cult in Louisiana, and the encounter of a sailor who discovered a sunken city of Relay. I don't know how to say it. Relay? Relay? I don't know. Thurston learns that these events all around revolve around Cthulhu, an ancient cosmic entity that like is worshipped by cultists around the world and sleeping underneath the ocean, eventually to return. When a group of sailors accidentally awaken Cthulhu after discovering Relay, I don't know how to say it, the creature kills most of them before they narrowly escaped. As Thurston pieces the truth together, he realizes that humanity is insignificant in the vast universe filled with incomprehensible beings, and fears that he too may be targeted for uncovering knowledge that is never meant to be known. So I like this kind of the government knows, but kind of like the Illuminati, like it's based around the whole world, but the government's trying to hide it because if someone knows, then it's kind of just like discovering this incomprehensible thing. Like, oh, someone says they know aliens, it's going to change your whole perception of thinking. And I think it's a cool concept, and it's a very deep thing that we could dive into, but I got other ones to cover on my list. But we can get back to that in another video. So moving on to more like horrific territory, more like internet horror territory, instead of old ancient beings, we have SCP-3000. And essentially, SCP-3000 is an entity under surveillance of the SCP Foundation. And if you don't know what the SCP Foundation is, we can get into that in another video. Like I said, we have more ocean creatures to undercover. But so basically, SCP-3000 is a serpent estimated in between 600 to 900 meters, so miles long. But because it's so massive, it coils along the ocean floor, it is impossible to get an actual measurement of this beast. But just like Cthulhu, it knows that you're thinking about it, and once it knows you're thinking about it, it essentially has you in his trap, and it gets you. You might be thinking, how does this entity that is 600 to 900 meters long, how does it get around? It moves really slow, but as soon as there's food in front of it, it'll move to that target as fast as it can. So it's moving really slow because it's so long. It's not as thick as you would think it is, but it is really long. So it's not really gonna move that fast, you know what I mean? But it doesn't really care for like humans, and more like it wants to wants to feed on your fear and like feed on your thoughts and make the human kind of go crazy and lose its mind. That's essentially its goal, and that's what it feeds on. This is a new day. As you can see, my hair is a little wet, but just ignore that. Under no circumstances are civilians allowed to attempt deep sea exploration or diving efforts in a quarantine area. So SCP-3000 is contained in this area underneath the sea like walled off. So it's kind of a huge cage for this huge beast, but they have it contained for somehow. Individuals affected by the anomalous properties of SCP-3000 are to be held in the containment indefinitely. So once this beast, or once this monster has a hold on you, and it kind of messes up your brain, and then that kind of gives a sign to the SCP Foundation that you need to be under surveillance forever, for your whole life. So honestly, that is worse than death. Like, I would rather be eaten by this thing than be quarantined for my whole life. Direct observation of SCP-3000 may cause severe mental alterations in the viewers. Individuals who directly observe SCP-3000, as well as any individual within an uncertain distance of SCP-3000, experience inexplicable head pain, paranoia, general fear and panic, and memory loss or alternation. So the SCP-3000 is basically just a creature that uses its mind powers to attack its prey, which I think is way scarier than it eating you or it just popping up. So just thinking about it, just seeing this creature kills you essentially. Even the people on the vessels, even the people that are experiencing these anomalies, like the people that work at SCP Foundation, they too have hallucinations and alternations of the brain. Although I really want this creature to be real, it is just a fictional creepy SCP monster, not a creepypasta. It is just an original work of art, so it isn't really based off any real life encounters with anything such like the Kraken is. But it is still scary, and God knows, you never know, it might even be real. You know, we don't know, you know. Moving on to the next one we have is mermaids. In folklore, a mermaid is an aquatic creature with a head and upper body of a female human, but a tail of a fish. Mermaids appear in folklore in many cultures worldwide, including Europe, Latin America, Asia, and Africa. So mermaids are kind of just like this myth spread around the whole entire world about there is half woman, half fishes in the water waiting to kill you guys. But mermaids are sometimes associated with frivolous events such as storms, shipwrecks, and drownings. Mermaids are basically sirens and like succubuses, and they lure men into the ocean with a song only they can hear. And after the mermaid has you, they end your life. They eat you or something like that, or just drown you, because humans can't really be in the sea that long. It was known to be bad luck to bring women on ships because of the pure fear of the siren. But naked women are fine. Look it up. It was actually more of a good luck charm to bring naked women on board instead of clothed women. So mermaids are a huge thing in pop culture now, but if people knew the real origin of mermaids, they would probably change their minds. But are there more mermaid variants like mermen or merdogs? Well, let's look into it. But mermaids, they typically resemble fish, half women, but there has been some cases where it took the shape of a bird or a snake, a seal, a frog, or any creature that resides near or in the water. The alven, a type of elven mermaid. So the river alven are an interesting type of mermaid found in the Netherlands. They are also called ottermanner, meaning otter men, and are typically also classified as a type of elf. They are similar to the selkie in that they shapeshift into otters using magical otter skins. Some say that the ottermanner travel in bubbles, bobbing to and fro above the water. They are most commonly seen inhabiting the river Elbe. So it's this man that turns into an otter using otter skins. It is probably controversial to if this is actually a mermaid and the type of classification of a mermaid, but it does sound a little like a mermaid, so I'm gonna count that as a mermaid. So next we got is blue men of the Minch. which sounds like some type of band or some type of group that plays instruments with pipes. The blue men are of the Minch are the type of mermaid that you don't want to meet in person. They are known for being violent, causing shipwrecks along the Scottish coastline. They are also called storm keplies. The blue skin and craving for poetry, the blue men are sometimes linked to an ancient Picts of Scotland. If you see a blue man floating on top of the water, he'll ask you to recite a poem to entertain him. If you refuse, he will turn over your boat or, unbeknownst to you, lead you to your death. So the blue men are basically these philosophical creatures that want to hear poems. And if you don't know a poem, what do? You know, like, I don't really know any poems off the top of my heart. So if the blue man were to come up to one of my ships or one of my boats, I would probably end up dying because I don't know any poems. So they are kind of passive, but they want to kill you if you don't show them a poem. So gotta learn your poems right now. So the Kamine were Greek goddesses of sacred wells and fountains. They were invoked to guard and guide women in childbirth, and eventually become synchronized with Greek muses. The Kamine's dedicated spring is locked just outside of the Porta Capannea, a site in which healing was given to those who sought it from water goddesses. So we have Corrigans. The people of Brittany, France, descended from Bretons, who also inhabited parts of the British Isles in ancient times. So they also share common qualities with sirens, singing, combining their hair, and luring men into their deaths. Interestingly, they're one of the few mermaids that steal children and replace them with channelings. So a fairy channeling was a fairy child left in place of kidnapped human child. Science and modern medicine weren't advanced back then, so our European ancestors believed things went wrong. When crops failed, when cows didn't give milk, it was because of the fairies. When they weren't blaming the fairies, it was most definitely the local witch's fault. When a baby was born with defects or grew sick, it was believed that it was actually a fairy channeling, and that a real human baby has been whisked away by fairies. So this is just another case of people back then didn't really understand science, and that you could be born with birth defects such as Down syndrome or autism or stuff like that. They kind of blamed it on just like fairies, which is a wild thing to do, especially when there's a goddess that helps women through childbirth in the same area of where this mermaid was essentially reside. The folklore tells many stories of babies being kidnapped and a hideous deformed creature being left in its crib, only to scare the living daylights out of child's poor parents the next morning. So it is sad because they're essentially calling these deformed children ugly and hideous, and they were kidnapped by some type of beast that left this baby in the crib. Because I think back in the day, if you give birth to one of these deformed babies, I mean, like we all do now today, I think they were just in their head about, oh, it's just a normal baby. But then they kind of realized as time went on that this is not a normal kid, and it needs to be taken care of as like a person with a birth defect. But back in the day, they didn't really know how to do those types of things, so they kind of just left it up to the gods, and which is very sad, but it happened, and it is changed now. So I really enjoyed making this video about monsters in the deep sea. I could have added a little bit more, but this video was kind of already getting long. And I don't like making my videos over an hour long. So if you wanted to see more about monsters and stuff like that, please give me a like and subscribe so we can talk about this more. Thank you. My name is Bodie, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.